All right, and we are back to another office hours video. In this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about one of the coolest, we could even call it a legal loopholes in the healthcare industry, which I rarely get to say, but it is true in my mind. It is a way to get around ownership of a healthcare practice, which usually requires you to be a licensed healthcare professional. It is the use of the MSO, or Management Services Organization. And effectively, what we're going to talk about in this office hours video is what an MSO is, key compliance concerns, and how to actually set it up, best practices, and then a few other general red flags and things to do. So, in general, now I am practicing as an attorney in Minnesota, California. Been doing this for 10 years, specifically in healthcare law. And so, one project that we often do is create a management services organization. So what is a management services organization? It is a separate company that contracts with a medical entity, medical practice, medical spa, some sort of company that's owned by medical professionals. And that separate company, through that contract, provides services. That's what it is at its highest, simplest level. Now, the reason that MSOs, or management services organizations, exist is because there are a lot of people who want to get involved with medical practices and do all the business stuff, all the administrative stuff, but they are not allowed to do any of the healthcare stuff. We don't have, except for limited circumstances, non-healthcare licensed professionals owning and providing healthcare services. And so what that means is everything else. So billing, human resources, IT, marketing, financial management, regulatory compliance, the facilities, actually doing the lease and all of that, sometimes even rental of the equipment. All of that is handled by the management services organization. And then the medical practice effectively just does the procedures. Let's say it's Botox, they just focus on doing Botox, take their salary, go home, and all that, business stuff and all the numbers and collecting the money and kind of the long-term growth strategy and how to maintain the business. That's all handled by the MSO. But the key is that the MSO does not own the medical practice. They cannot, under the corporate practice of medicine doctrine in most states. And so the management services organization is, I think, a cheat code or a legal loophole to, let's just say, mimic ownership but not actually have ownership. And so I love this. I think it's, the secret is out on this. And I think there are a lot of creative ways that it's being used right now, especially with technology advancing and AI and the ability to bifurcate a medical practice into the actual medical services and then all of the other businessy stuff that usually a licensed professional that went to school and just did their skilled trade is not really interested, nor do they really want to worry about all the marketing and money stuff. They just want to make a reasonable salary, do their procedure, do a good job, and go home, usually. So how does this actually work in practice? So we have one big agreement between the medical practice and the MSO. It's called a Management Services Agreement, or MSA. Notice the difference between MSA and MSO there. The MSA is effectively a legal death grip legal agreement from the MSO down to the medical practice, stating that a bunch of services are going to be done, a bunch of money is going to be transferred. So the money actually flows from the patient down into the medical practice, as it should, and then up or over into the MSO for all the services that they're doing. This is generally a fixed monthly management fee. If you get really fancy and you have a really good attorney and you know what you're doing, you can sometimes do a percentage of the practice's collection of revenues. You need to be very careful there, both in federal and state law, for fee splitting rules. And sometimes we have a combination of two. The safest legal route is always going to be a fixed fee that is the fair market value of what it would be if I had to go and contract with somebody else. Now, the reason I said legal death grip is because the management services organization is probably putting in a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of money to make all this work. And they're concerned that the medical doctor or the healthcare professionals that are owning the medical practice might just sell everything. They might realize, oh my gosh, there's all this money moving around. They might say they want more. They might try and sell. They might leave. And so the MSO, in an attempt or really a realization that they need to protect their investment, puts in very strategic and restrictive provisions in that management services agreement to say, listen, that money is coming up in a change of ownership situation. We need to be involved in that. You can't just, sell it to your friend in the middle of the night. And so in a well-structured management services agreement, and usually a series of other legal agreements, we can prevent the medical practice from being able to sell, transfer, or really have any leverage to demand more compensation. There are some red flags and legal concerns in this area. Really, it's the fee structure and fee splitting. So you need to be very careful if you're going to do anything percentage-based. Percentage-based, it's so easy to do. You basically just fee split, and that looks and feels a lot like ownership. But the whole point is that is what we're not allowed to do in general. So you need to be very careful there, especially with any sort of Medicaid or public funding, Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE, others. Also, the MSOs have this pesky habit of trying to get involved in the clinical decision making, and that is a no-no in the corporate practice of medicine doctrine in most states. I can only comment specifically on Minnesota and California. And in these states, what we don't want is the business people up in the MSO telling the nurse how to actually do Botox, or, can you just squirt some more units in there so we can make some more money? That type of thing is a no-no. So that's going to be not just treatments, but also the oversight of the clinical staff. There's usually an element of clinical supervision, clinical training and disciplinary action, and also, any sort of influence of the medical records. That all needs to stay inside the medical entity. And also, the MSO needs to resist the urge to tell the medical practitioners that they need to increase production of certain procedures or services. There's a very different strategy between having, key performance indicators and goals and trending towards growth and things like that, versus having pressure on the poor nurse or physician to say, listen, I need you doing 5 procedures an hour because we need to get this revenue up. Because you can see that the pressure there can influence the physician or nurse to then be going through procedures a lot quicker, and then we lose a reasonable standard of care. So there needs to be that clinical independence right there. I think that a well-structured MSO or MSA, an attorney and business advisor, has walked you through exactly what's going on. This is a pretty massive agreement. It's a pretty big deal. We're sidestepping ownership, but it looks and feels like the amount of work that would go in for ownership. So I would not take that lightly. Absolutely, I would be using an attorney that has done these before and understands what the corporate practice of medicine doctrine is and works ideally only with healthcare businesses. But want to put it on your radar, especially to investors out there, those looking to get involved in the medical spa or medical practice game, but haven't really figured out how to do so and don't have a healthcare license. An MSO would be for you. Also, other business attorneys, if you're listening to this, I am happy to work with you as co-counsel when you're stepping into these goofy fee splitting weird rules. I am here to advise on those, but still have you serve business clients that happen to be in healthcare. All right. Hope this was helpful. Like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you at the next office hours.